Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Antony Carpen here for the next part of our series on the shaping of the city of Cambridge, my hometown. Now, I'm currently outside the Rounds Church, which is one of the oldest churches in the city. And we also happen to be on one of the major routes through the city. You remember the road Via Divana that I was talking about in one of the previous episodes? Well, this is part of, or effectively part of that road, basically by Rounds Church Street. And if I switch the camera angle round, like so, you can see that's the Rounds Church. Now, if you look up there, you can see behind that silver birch, the very round tower. That's a much more modern addition to the much older lower part of the building. If we move around here, you can see that red brick structure just in the distance there. That's the Cambridge Union building. We'll switch the camera back round this way. And that's where the various high-profile debates the Union Society has take place. Quite often, it's easy to mistake the Cambridge Union building with the Cambridge University Students' Union. The Cambridge Union building and the Cambridge Union Society are separate to the university. They've got nothing to do with each other, which is why every so often when a really controversial speaker comes in, someone with a reputation of stirring hate and things like that comes up, quite often the Students' Union gets a bit of a haranguing from various people, even though they've got nothing to do with it. So, like I said, again, if I switch the camera angle round, you will see, just as we come back into focus, again, you will see Bridge Street heading towards the River Cam, and up around the corner, that's effectively what I call the Jelly Belly shop. For many years, Cambridge never had a Jelly Belly shop. And given that I find Jelly Bellies very, very yummy, this was quite an issue for me. So I thought to myself, right, what are we going to do about it? And I threatened to put having a proper Jelly Belly shop in Puffles' election manifesto, but just before Puffles stood for election in 2014, they opened this thing, and so we didn't have to worry about it. What we have here on the building and the scaffolding, that's St John's College Chapel, which again I mentioned earlier. Magnificent building built by Gilbert Scott, and it's a Victorian masterpiece. And what we have here was built in I believe in the mid-1800s, and next to it there are again some relatively modern early to mid-20th century buildings that were again built by the college. Now, for those of you who switch you back here, for those of you who are interested in having a visit to the Rounds Church, like I said, my take is everyone who's ever been to primary school here in the city should get the opportunity to come in here. I think on the day I was supposed to go into the Rounds Church in 1988, the building was closed and it was an absolutely pouring with rain day, and so I never got to see it. So as you can see, it's £2.50 to go in, and that money is essential for the upkeep of what is effectively a very, very ancient historical monument, and for me is one of the finest mini masterpieces in the city that's easily overlooked. So I'm going to see if I'm going to pay to go in, because I should, and I'm going to see if they will give me permission just to talk about some of the various things inside there. So fingers crossed they'll let me. Well, as it turns out, because I'm a local resident here and Cambridge is my hometown, I get to go in for free, which is splendid. And also they've very kindly given me permission to film. So for those of you who are interested, there's a very interesting Cambridge story that they've got here. Now, because the text is copyright, I'm not going to be going through in detail each of the exhibits. But one of the things that really stands out for me in the first frame is the impact of Christianity in England, and in particular Cambridge, because if you look through the archives, you will see a huge number of churches that were built in and around Cambridge, and they all had a huge impact on the growth of our city, not just in terms of the early times, but if you look in the Victorian times, again, there were a number of very relatively modern churches, in particular the Methodist churches, that were built as the city really expanded. Now, the reason for me why that's so significant is because a lot of those churches, in particular in the past 50 years, were either sold off as other buildings or were knocked down and replaced by things like office blocks. And in a way that also reflects the social changes that were happening in the city in the 20th century. And again, if you look in the Cambridgeshire collection, you will see a map of the centre of Cambridge and all the pubs that used to be there. And it's quite interesting how the decline of both the churches and the pubs in Cambridge seemed to happen around the same time as, in particular in those post-war eras, reflecting, again, changing social habits and also the growth of that invention called the television. I'm just going to squeeze round. Sorry. Now, the other thing that we have here in the round church are some beautiful illuminations, and you can see this one behind me, and on a day like this, stained glass really comes into its own. And also what we have here, if you can just see behind me, and you will see these on many churches, not just here in Cambridge but elsewhere, is you will see a whole host of stone tablets for parishioners long gone who were benefactors of the church and the individual buildings. And again, if we just look around here, again you will see the stained glass really comes into its own. Now I'm running out of memory, so I'm going to stop here, and I'll see you in the next episode.